This podcast is brought to you by Mother Joe. At the end of a long day at work, in the endless stream of birthdays and holidays to remember, and with the general hustle and bustle of day-to-day life, it can be hard to find the time to make those wholesome, fulfilling, philosophical insights your spirit needs to keep healthy. Sure, you can go out and consume them from other people, but all too often they're canned, unpalatable, out-of-date gruel that never quite sit well with you and leave you sick to the stomach. That's why Mother Joe delivers spiritual enlightenment directly to your doorstep, giving you all the materials and ingredients you need in perfectly sized proportions while still letting you cook them up yourself to fit the individual needs of your own growing soul. With recipes like trust on the Red Sea, patience from Jesus to the apostles, and forgiveness with Joseph and his brothers, you'll find all the nourishment you've been craving but never had the time or know how to make yourself. After all, as they say, man doesn't live on bread alone. Mother Joe, fresh insights on ancient texts anytime you need. Welcome to Little, Middle, and Biggle. I'm your middle brother Joshua.
I'm your biggle brother Noah.
And I'm your Grandpa Dave.
Woo! And we are the ones who will try our best to answer the little, middle, and biggle questions we all have in life. So today we are joined by our very own Grandpa Dave. Grandpa Dave, say hello.
Hello, folks.
Do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us something about yourself.
I'm not sure what to say. I've been around for a while, been around the track a few times, and a little bit long in the tooth. And but at any rate, I sure am pleased with these two guys that are joining me here this morning. It's just wonderful to have such great grandsons. And so I just want anybody listening to know that.
Well, we are super thrilled to have you here because you are quite an interesting person as well as, an exceptional grandfather, but that kind of goes without saying, I feel like. So we will start off. Noah is doing the little question today. Noah, would you please quiz us?
Yes. Okay. I came up with this about 20 seconds ago, but my little question is, what is the most mischievous thing you did as a child?
Okay, what's yours?
I don't know. I have to think about it. I just thought it'd be a good question because I want to know Grandpa Dave's answer, and I would like to know your answer as well. And I'm sure that I have some sort of answer, but
I can go first if you like,
because awesome.
My childhood is overflowing with mischievous things. So, but first, I feel like we should have some limitations on childhood. How old are you thinking? Like, what's the end of childhood for you?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I'm pretty childish now.
Yeah.
But we'll say by the end of high school.
Okay. That's a good range. Okay. So 3 things come to mind. I will start in order of increasing mischievousness. So mischievosity. Yeah. So the least mischievous thing, I would say, is the one that everyone in the family knows about, where there's the picture of me in the cabinet where we used to keep all of our crackers and cookies and stuff when I was like probably 2.5 years old. And I'm just sitting there munching the crackers with this smile on my face like, you caught me. And yeah, so that's not the most mischievous, but it is definitely up among the most mischievous. Secondly, since we're going to the end of high school, when I was 14, so to back up, for anyone who doesn't know, we had the lamentable ban in our household until, well, I guess the ban was never officially lifted. Against watching SpongeBob. But one day when I was homesick, I turned on Nickelodeon and oops, it was SpongeBob. And I was just too sick to get up and, change the channel. So I watched SpongeBob for probably 10 hours straight that day. And after that, SpongeBob became a part of my life, much to our parents' chagrin and Noah's a little bit. Yeah, that was more just kind of blatant rule breaking than mischievousness, I guess. But anyway, last one, Noah, you will be maybe slightly displeased to hear this, but when you used to keep all of your change, like, in a drawer in your bathroom, did you ever notice that the change drawer never filled up?
No.
Well, that's because it went right into my bank account. So, sorry and thank you. I'll pay you back eventually.
It's okay. It was probably like $5 worth.
It was definitely more than $5 worth. So those are my 3 mischievous things. Yeah. Who would like to go next? Grandpa Dave, do you have anything?
I was just thinking, as you were talking about back in the day, at Halloween time, and this is different than it is now, but back, trick-or-treating was sort of just new back then when I was in early grade school. And my brother and I and a couple of our buddies used to go trick-or-treating. And some of the neighbors were receptive to this. Some were not. Some were just sort of, and there were a couple that were just really rat finks.
Mm-hmm.
And we had this guy that lived down the street. We thought he was really a crotchety old man. And we would play, baseball was a big deal back in our day. And we would play softball out excuse me, in the middle of the street. And we even had painted bases on the curbing. And it turned out that it was our diamond of choice, what the street was near this guy's house. And this guy was such a jerk that when we were play there, he would first try to move us out, get out of here, And if we didn't go or gave him any static at all, he would actually call the police.
Wow.
And the police would come and say, "No, you boys, you can't play here, And of course we would go, they'd leave. But so this guy was such a jerk. And we thought some way we could pay him back. And about that time there was a trick or treat, dirty trick thing kind of circulating around, and something you could really do. And so this involved that you got some feces
of what variety?
Well,
like dog?
Anything that you could find. But of course, the one that was most available was dog excrement, and generally it was you had to get. According to the lore, you had to get some real good mushy stuff. Not any dry stuff, mushy stuff.
Mm.
And you would pick this up. Buddy had rubber gloves, and we did it with a stick, and put it in his paper sack. And then fill the paper sack up, some with real squishy dog poop. And then take it over to your enemy's front porch, put it on there, and lighted a fire.
Wow.
With a match. And so that was, and of course the idea was that the guy, hopefully it would be the guy, would see this blazing on his front porch, thinking those dirty trick-or-treaters would come out and start stamping it. And that's kind of what happened with this one. We had a really nice sack, lit it on fire, my brother and I and a couple of our buddies, and went across the street and kind of hid so we couldn't be seen. Then one of us lit it on fire, and the other guy rang the doorbell and ran and across the street to hide. And this guy came out, and of course it worked to perfection.
Oh my gosh!
He had one thing that could have been better if he was out there in his bare feet, but it wasn't.
Yeah, really.
And he stomped on this sack, and of course we were really broken up with laughter.
Mm-hmm.
There was no point even ever trying to play. He knew who did it, even though he couldn't say for sure. And we never dared to play ball in his street again for fear that he would, really call the cops.
Yeah.
That was probably one of the worst things. But
wow.
There were many others if I could just think about them.
Don't worry. Whenever they come to you, just let them flow. I would love to hear more. I'd always thought that the expression, like, a heaping pile of flaming shit was kind of, just an expression. No.
I'm not sure which gave birth, whether the idea gave birth to the reality or vice versa.
But wonderful. Noah, have you thought of anything mischievous? I mean, it clearly can't top that.
Right? Yeah, there's no way. I mean, I thought of one thing mischievous, but it would break my rules because it was actually during college.
Well, we can bend the rules for you.
These are bad ones. These are bad things.
Well, this is the most similar vein to Grandpa Dave's, at least.
Mine?
But there was no poop involved. It was. It's not even nearly as good of a story, but there's a fountain at Hendrix, and on the day before classes started, we were like, you know what? It'd be really fun to just see what gallon upon gallon of laundry detergent would do in that fountain. So we bought like 8 gallons of it, and every person grabbed a bottle, and we just walked as casually as we could, all on our phones on speakerphone, but with it just in our pocket so we could hear each other, but we looked like we were just walking in pairs or alone. And we got about 20 yards away, and we look around, and there's no public safety carts anywhere. And we're like, okay, go. And this just swarm of people just emerges from the bushes, and all just dumps it onto the fountain. And then we ran off in the other direction, and then it just made this giant bubbling fountain of bubbles, and it actually really looked cool, actually.
Somebody actually did that my freshman year.
Oh yes, that was us.
Again?
No, that was when that was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I remember I was just walking to class, and I walked past the fountain, and I was like, this is really weird. Is the fountain always this frothy?
Oh yeah. It was much more the night before, too.
Wow. Okay, great.
You probably thought that's just how they clean the fountain.
I had no idea that. Yeah. I especially had no idea that the perpetrator was my own brother.
Yeah.
But, yep. Okay, Grandpa Dave, would you take us away with the middle question, please?
Well, the question I was thinking about, and I started telling you this a little bit ago. I know you guys have both had experiences with healthcare delivery. And Josh, for you at the Heal the City Clinic, and Noah, of course, working in the emergency room. And I was wondering to ask each one of you if you would recount an incident that you experienced in your tenure there that it could be funny, it could be tragic, whatever, but just interesting. So I would just go ahead, Noah. You can go first if you can think of something.
Oh man. So they're people in healthcare are a little bit superstitious sometimes. I don't buy into it too much, but there was one day that was a Friday the 13th with a full moon at night, and I almost buy into the superstition because of that. So there were 3 different people all trying to die at the same time, and just lots and lots of crazy stuff coming in. And there were 2 patients that I was just thinking of, and I can't remember. One of them was a funny story. It was something ridiculous. It was like something had been stuck somewhere it didn't belong. And
you don't need to give any more details than that. Let the imagination keep going.
Yeah, it was a weird one. And then and there was also some girl that was allegedly just driving in her car or riding the passenger seat, I think, and got shot in the back, right in her upper back somewhere. And so it was she just couldn't immediately couldn't walk. She was probably, I think, in her early 20s or something. And it looked like she was going to survive and everything. She, was stable and was fine whenever we shipped her off to the trauma center too. But yeah, that was one of the times where it's oh man, that person's really, really young. That happened very suddenly.
Yeah.
But, there are other times like that too. Like someone will have like a pulmonary embolism where there's a clot in their lungs and they're like, in their early 30s or something. You're like, wow, that just came out of nowhere for them. But yeah, that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Wow, that's heavy.
Yeah. I can think of a much funnier story though too. Can we throw that in there?
Sure, go for it.
Okay, here, how about this? I will let you go and you go if you want to, and then I'll tell the best one I can think of off the top of my head.
Okay, Grandpa Dave, would you mind going next? I still need some thinking
Me
time.
going next?
Oh, please.
Gosh, I can, as you can imagine, think of a lot of things.
Yeah.
Just for background.
But these are usually, emergency room things that we're talking about. And, excuse me, one of the oddest things I can remember was, part of my internship rotation in the emergency room at St. Luke's Hospital in Kansas City, Missouri. And this poor, unfortunate woman, she was, as I recall, she was around early 20s, something like that. She'd been very, very despondent, and she was brought in by ambulance. It was really tragic because she had been so despondent that she attempted, I say attempted because, as you'll see, it didn't work out, suicide. And she did this in a kind of a very imaginative way to really be sure. The first thing she did was she drank a whole bottle, I guess it was about a quart bottle, of rubbing alcohol, which is, is quite toxic. You shouldn't be drinking rubbing alcohol. But she drank this down, hoping to poison herself. And then she took a shotgun and aimed it at her abdomen and pulled the trigger and blew a hole in her abdomen. And about that time, somebody in her house heard the shot, and they called the ambulance when they saw it happen. Ambulance brought her in, and she was in a bad way. But the long and the short of it, she had this hole in her abdomen and was leaking out. She'd actually lacerated her stomach with the buckshot, and and the alcohol was leaking out of a hole in her back. The upshot of all of this was that she made a complete recovery. And firstly, because you think, my God, how'd that happen? Well, she missed any vital organ in her abdomen the way that she happened to position the shotgun, except it lacerated her stomach. But that was right after she drank the alcohol, and the alcohol ran out the hole in her side, basically decontaminated that area because of the intestinal contents that went out there, and she made a complete recovery.
Wow.
I don't know whatever happened to her. I hope that she learned her lesson, either to not drink alcohol, become a better shot, or else maybe go get some therapy, some badly needed therapy.
Yeah.
Life isn't such a horrible thing. But that was one of the oddest things I can recall for emergency. There's a bunch of other ones, but I will pass the thing.
Wow.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's a great one.
Oh, wow. Yeah, just for reference also, by the way, Grandpa Dave is a hematologist and oncologist, double specialist, so he has plenty of experience in the medical field. So when he talks about the weirdest or most impactful thing he's seen a lot of stuff. For me, the most impactful thing is also sort of a heavy story, but it has definitely impacted me more deeply than any other experience I had at Heal of the City, which, again, for reference, is a clinic that services people who do not even have insurance. So it is purely charity-based, and it services mostly people who are undocumented immigrants or, for some other reason, unable to get any sort of healthcare or any source of income. So one day I was translating for a class that was on stress management. And so the psychiatrist who was presenting the class said, okay, now, who has some sources of stress in their life? And of course, everyone just kind of potato-faced, and they were like, I don't want to participate in class. But eventually this one guy who was probably in his late 50s, a man from Mexico, raised his hand and he said, yeah, on the way here, I got pulled over for a speeding ticket. for going 3 miles per hour over the speeding limit by policemen. And I don't have citizenship. So if they decide to take this to court, I'm going to be deported. And the whole room was just, like, floored. Because everyone else, probably like me, had been thinking, oh man, I'm really stressed about, like, making my next phone payment, or, what am I going to cook for dinner tonight? Or something like that. And this guy was facing down the end of 2 decades of a life that he'd built in the United States, all because one policeman decided to flag him for something that was really not a big deal at all. And probably because he was Hispanic and the policeman thought that he could maybe get some deeper charges on him just because of racism and discrimination, and that's the society we live in, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But that made me very grateful to be an American, and also not grateful in the complacent way where I just think, whew, wow, sure dodged that bullet, but also grateful in the way that made me think I do not deserve this great fortune that I have, and so I feel a duty to extend that good fortune to as many people as possible, whether that comes in working at Heal the City, for instance, to help the people who are already here, or working to vote and be an activist for public policy to let productive individuals like this man who was about to be deported, into the country and not have so much red tape and particularly discrimination against them.
That was good too. Yeah.
Thanks. So Noah, what was your funny story? Please, we can use that.
Yeah. As a break from the deep stuff, I have 2 that have come to mind that are some of my favorites, or at least the ones that I remember the best. So I'll give you guys the options. Do you want the auto-defenestrating woman or the Waffle House sausage slinger?
Waffle House sausage slinger.
All right. So there was a man a few years ago outside of Memphis. He had been running through the woods with a machete for a few days. Not 100% sure how long, because the government was after him, and so obviously he had to, like, the safest place to hide was in Shelby Forest outside of Memphis, Tennessee.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so he eventually, got a little bit hungry and got a little bit beat up, and tried to jump over a fence and missed and twisted his ankle a little bit and lost his pants at some point in there. And so with, machete in hand, pants not on, and scratches everywhere, no shoes or anything, he walks into a Waffle House.
Did you get a urology consult? Excuse me.
So yeah, he walked into a Waffle House, and some kind gentleman there lent him, in awe of this magnificent wonder, lent him his jeans permanently, and then the ambulance got there, and police got there first, and he said, like, oh, I was running from these, these government agents and everything, and the ambulance got there, and he got in, he's like, no, it's those police right there, they were chasing me, they're the ones. And then he got to the ER and told us a whole different story about running from his neighbors or something. Oh man, I thought of another great one.
We can save it for dinner tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the Waffle House sausage slinger.
So did the guy who lent him the jeans, did he have another pair of jeans, or did he just have to, like, eat the rest of his pancakes pantsless?
I'm not sure.
Oh my god.
But somehow, he just gave him a pair of pants. It's like, okay, these are for you.
Great.
He just happened to have a pair of pants?
Yeah.
I'm going to start keeping an extra pair of pants in the back of my car every time I come to visit you in Memphis, Noah.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Can I give a really short one too?
Oh, sure, yeah, please.
All right, this one, it's not the auto-defenestrating woman. That one's,
that's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah. She was also running away from the police because she didn't like going to jail.
Reasonable.
In your own words. But there was this little guy who like got beat up at a bar and was, bleeding everywhere and just like making a huge fuss, and he wasn't, hurt that bad, but he, had a couple good cuts to his scalp and everything and some bruises. And, the cops showed up, and, he and I, like the police officer and I, are standing outside of the room. And, the guy's just making a huge fuss and goes, Am I going to jail, officer? Am I going to jail? And officer goes, oh, well, I don't know. I mean, we'll just have to see. We'll see what happens. And he steps out of the room a little bit, out of sight, and he looks at me and goes, that dude's absolutely going to jail. He stabbed a guy tonight.
Oh, my God.
Oh.
That clears things up pretty nicely.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. For reference, Noah has been working as a medical scribe for many years in the Memphis ERs, so he has also seen some stuff.
Yeah,
much more than me.
Much less than Grandpa Dave, but
yeah.
This is and for the public. This is also the ER where Memphis died. Not Memphis. Elvis died, isn't it?
Is it real?
Oh, it might be.
Wow, I'd never thought about that.
Well, I thought you guys used to see his ghosts all the time.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you guys do not mind, I will take us away with the big question.
I have a big question, though, too.
Oh, okay.
Well, one thing I would like to just visit just shortly, though.
Okay.
Just was listening to the news this morning, and again, there's let's see, they pulled the statue of Christopher Columbus. I think it was in the City Hall front yard or something in Columbus, Ohio, down yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was yesterday. And, and I just kind of wonder, what all these things about destroying Civil War statues, recreating the flag of the country, or the state, getting rid of the Civil War banner and all that. I was kind of wondering what you guys thought about that. To me, it's sort of like some of the things that they did back in the old days, when they'd have a change of government or religion or whatever, and they'd burn the Bibles or any book that was considered subversive, they would burn it. And I'm just kind of wondering what you thought about that. Just briefly, if you don't want to comment, that's okay.
Oh, no.
Should we keep pulling down these statues and or whatever,
So,
okay, go ahead.
First, Grandpa Dave, is there anything else that you would like to give as sort of a more in-depth answer? Like, what is your suggestion for what to do aside from pulling down these statues? Just leave them be, or some other societal change?
Well, I think that when you look at it, I think of the old adage about those who forget the lessons of history are condemned to repeat them. And when you look at these people, like the Civil War generals or Columbus, I'm not quite sure what the beef was with Columbus, except there were a number of things in his background. But at any rate, I think these folks were products of their own culture at that time. And you can even, to quote an extreme example, look at Hitler. He was one of the blackest blots on the face of human history. They're right next to Genghis Khan and those other guys. But in a very real sense, he, as well as the others, were products of their culture, of their times. And I think that we need to face up as human beings to the fact that, okay, we all, or at least we all should strive to be the best person that we can. But a lot of the times we fail. And you can see what happens if we fail and don't recognize the failure and continue along that pathway. And that's exactly what so many of these people did. And I think that first of all, there are valuable lessons to learn by looking at the history, number one, and the lessons that it teaches us. And the other thing is that, you also have to think, particularly with respect to Civil War. A lot of the folks that over 500,000 American men died in the Civil War. That's the worst, bloodiest war that America has fought. And everybody that went to that war carrying a gun, by and large, didn't feel like they were fighting for this or that or whatever, or black rights or slavery or whatever. A lot of them went thinking that they were serving their country. And you thought, wait, they were traitors. They weren't traitors. Think back that's only maybe 50, 60 years from when we wrote our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution and so forth. And one of the primary objectives there is we reserve the right to have our own states' rights. States' rights. And now, that was part of the culture. It's not now. That's not the culture now. But so how can we look at our culture now and say that was wrong? Those people were products of their own culture. And if you try to cover that up and reconstruct history, you're doing a disservice to the future. That's part of what I have to say. I could go on and on.
Noah, would you like to add your bit? I usually jump in and word vomit, so please, You had something to say. I would love to hear it.
I think my thought is a shorter one and is not at all against what Grandpa Dave's saying. I think with just on a more, I don't know, this may be like a more just superficial level is not the right word, but as far as like what to do with the statues themselves, when I think of like, Grandpa Dave is absolutely right. We should not just go, oh, well, that was a black spot in history, or, oh, well, those people did stuff that we are not really okay with today. Let's just forget about them and get rid of them, because that's a great way to just not learn anything from it. When I think of like a statue that is, in front of a courthouse or like in the middle of a park, it's more like it depends on why the statue is built and what, is written at the bottom of it and stuff like that. But it is more likely to be a celebration of that character. And I think, if it's, if there's a statue of someone that did some terrible things, maybe in the middle of a park or in front of the courthouse isn't the place for that, because it gives this idea of we're celebrating that character. But I also don't think that they should just be torn down and thrown away, because that is a part of our history, even if we don't like it, even if it's bad. So maybe we put those in places like museums and places where you go to learn about your history and to realize, the good people and the bad, because we can't just pretend that everything was always good. And I like the idea of making statues to celebrate people that, that had, the rest of humanity's best interest very obviously in mind, and not at all against replacing some statues with that. But I think that we should keep the things like the relics of the past, even the ones that are, make us feel uncomfortable, because, we have to be able to learn from them and remember everything that made us where we are now, not just the things that we're like, oh yeah, really proud of that.
Yeah, I would agree very much with both of you. Just to go back to the Columbus thing, I think the reason for the backlash against Columbus is just because, yes, he discovered the New World and everything, but he did so in a way that actively dehumanized the native peoples, like literally called them less than human, and called for their not only manipulation and exploitation, but literally their extermination at times. So I think that is probably why he was looked down upon in this instance. Moving on to the actual question of what to be done with these statues, I agree that they should not be trashed forever. That, like Noah said, they would be very well suited in maybe a museum or even like a university's history department or something. However, I do agree that when you put up a statue of someone in a public place, that is actively glorifying them. That's putting them from history to legend, almost. And the things that we want to be part of our American legend, not our American history, what we want to be our legacy, and not just our past, should be things that represent our values currently and what we are aiming towards, not what we have fallen into in the past. So even if that means that, in public places, maybe we have a statue of someone who did some incredible research in that area, for example, or in Amarillo, we have at the airport, we have the statue of the astronaut whose name I'm totally forgetting.
Jim Husband.
Jim Husband.
Was it Jim Husband or Rick Husband?
Rick Husband.
I'm sorry, Rick Husband.
Yeah.
I would have believed either of those. Rick Husband. And that's because we are all for exploration, adventure, and respecting the world and seeing the world as a unified whole, not as our tiny little enclave amongst many others. So by putting that there, as opposed to like a Civil War general, we are able to say, this is what we strive towards, not this is what we have experienced. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, well, it really does. And in fact, that's really kind of a good summation of what I was thinking. And I would just go a little bit farther, embellish that a little bit by saying one of the lessons to be learned is that have we conquered those things that made Nazism, that made slavery, have we conquered that? I'm not so sure. I would hope that as a civilization that we are moving towards the day when we realize that, hey, the reason that we're pulling the statue down is because of what this person represented. Or we don't want, or let's remember what they did and realize there but for the grace of God go I. Because I think we all have those dark places within us. It just depends. So, but.
Yeah, I would definitely be in favor of when we pull down a statue, for example, like that of Columbus, and we do eventually replace it, still having like a plaque that says, this used to be a statue of Columbus celebrating this for these reasons, and we tore it down for this reason. So, it could say...
Interesting idea.
Yeah. I mean, like, for a Civil War general, we could say, this used to be a statue of some war general. I had one in my mind. Grandpa Dave, what's a Civil War general name from the South?
Well, it's Thomas Jackson.
Robert E. Lee.
Robert E. Lee, yeah.
Hey, I took a whole year of Texas history, and that's what I learned. Yes, so we could have, when we tear down that statue of Robert E. Lee, wherever that might be, we could have a plaque saying, we did have a statue of him. We thought of him as worthy of a statue because he represented the fight for freedom and liberty. However, we have since come to realize that fight for freedom and liberty was perhaps guided for the wrong reasons. And we see him as having failed in these ways by, seeing people of a different race as inferior and worthy of slavery, which, as a culture, we do not condone. Yeah, I don't know. You guys have any thoughts based on that or based on other things we've said?
That's an interesting thought to leave a plaque explaining why something used to be there. I never thought of that before. But anyways.
Well, I think it's important to think, as I recall, I'm paraphrasing and misquoting, but I don't think so. One of the reasons Robert E. Lee was had already been commissioned and was a recognized military leader right on the eve of the Civil War. He decided that he would no longer be a American, let's say a northern state soldier. He would be the dissident soldier in the Confederacy. And his reason was that he was, and this is how this guy's thoughts, a lot of them, and he had an oath that he had taken previously to the sovereign state of Virginia when he was graduated from West Point to the United States of America. Okay, you can say, well, that's a real way of skinning a different way of skinning a cat. Yeah, but I think we need to look at those things from their point of view and think, well, maybe there was something good about this guy. He's not totally a jerk.
Yeah, or like the ultra extreme example of Hitler wanting to be an artist. He was not he's pretty much a rotten human being, but he was a human being. Wanted to be to do art and stuff, which is weird to think about. But
yeah,
and remember, Hitler was a product again of his culture at that time, as were so many of the people that supported Nazism. That was that they fought the First World War, they suffered an ignominious defeat, and then at the Treaty of Versailles, they had a humiliating treaty of peace that put all kinds of restrictions on German economy. It was humiliating, and that was the major thing that Hitler rose to power over, by rejecting that treaty and saying, we're going to show these so-and-sos that they can't put us down like that. We're Germans, And so, again, and a lot of the people that supported him felt that way. Again, it's a cultural thing. And we have to realize that there's going to be other cultural movements that come up during our lifetime. And we're going to have to decide whether we're going to join them and with the good, or reject them because they're bad. That's what I think. That's all. I'm going to shut up now.
No, I really enjoyed hearing your thoughts on that. Thank you for supplying the Bickle question. That was way better than the one that I had.
That was an awesome one.
Yeah. Well, I think that it is about time that we roll the credits. So I will go ahead and get blabbing. This podcast is created by the three of us, written by none of us, and edited and produced by me, Joshua. Hopefully it's also listened to and enjoyed by you, but no pressure. So join us next time as we unravel more of the world's big questions, or maybe just get tangled up in them. We'll see how things go when we get there. And if you have any questions, suggestions, or ideas on how we could make this podcast better, send us a message at littlemiddlebiggle@outlook.com. Love, thanks, and T-Rex hugs from all of us. We couldn't have done this without you. Say bye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.